It's the last mile of the New York Marathon. Thousands of runners have participated, crossing bridges and traversing city streets until they come up at Central Park for the final miles. The world-class runners had finished hours ago. Now those who struggle across the finish line are ragtag ordinary runners who have pushed their bodies far past the normal limits of their routine exercise program. For these runners, the finish times are not remarkable, but their tenacity, their courage, and their will are the stuff of legends. They run only for themselves. They do not run to win, but only to finish. And it's during this time of heroic finishes at the end of the marathon that a married couple in their 50s approach the line. They're not first-class athletes who have crossed the line hours earlier. They're amateurs, running only for the sheer love of the race. And after 6 hours of running and walking the 26.2-mile course, they rounded the final turn in Central Park at the Tavern on the Green restaurant. Look at their faces. She is crying, her face drawn in pain, and her eyes are closed. He has the look of determination, but also of hope. He holds her hand while they run, or really I should say while they limp toward the finish line. Their feet are blistered and their legs are aching. And finally they round the last turn in the road and the finish line comes into sight. And as they almost danced across the finish line hand in hand, surrounded by jubilant cheering of the grandstand, they said, "We did it, we did it." They were victors. They were home at last. Now, Isaiah's prophecy, which our first reading from the Old Testament is designed to invoke and encourage just the same emotion. His original hearers were Israelites, locked in seemingly endless exile from their homeland and from Jerusalem. They had been conquered by a foreign superpower, and transported against their will to the country of Babylon. But Isaiah calls on the Israelites to regain their hope. He tells them that the end is in sight. At least it's in his sight. And despite the lack of confirming evidence, Isaiah was called to be a prophet of hope to a hopeless people, and he has a good word for us too. Despite the fears of terrorism, of personal problems, or economic stress, we must not hurl ourselves into depression and anxiety. And the way out of fear is hope. It's always hope that allows us to endure a challenge or a crisis. The anticipation of a baby's arrival gives the mother strength to endure hours of pain, the pain of labor. It's the anticipation of peace and quiet in the empty nest that gives parents strength to endure the tumultuous teenage years of the same child. It's hope for a good career that allows a college student to finish the course of studies. It's the hope of returning home that sustains the soldier, serving his or her country in a foreign land. And Isaiah knows that the source of our ultimate hope is God. If our hope is grounded in our faith, instead of our own optimism or our own abilities or in our government, then that hope can carry us through the most challenging of times. Heart attacks, the death of a loved one, the loss of income, and the threats of danger cannot overcome the hope that God presents in every moment of our lives. Hope allows us to envision a better future than the current challenge. It's hope of the finish line that lets the runner place one foot in front of the other when the muscles are aching. It's the hope of the porch light and a safe bed that keeps a trucker driving through a rainstorm toward home. It's the hope of a miracle comeback that keeps the losing team on the field with time running out in the game. It's the hope of one more survivor that motivates the weary rescue workers at the scene of a disaster. Hope is the fuel in the engine of life. And for the follower of Christ, hope is spelled in 3 letters. G-O-D. And hope in God reminds us that in the end, God will bring us all things of joy. Isaiah paints a picture of an amazing celebration for weary exiles. Notice that he does not give them very specific details of timing or location or the method of God's victorious conclusion to the saga of human history. Isaiah only speaks in the vocabulary of poetry and song. His vision is glorious, a world of peace, all creation and creatures living in harmony. Every road made safe, every enemy turned into a friend, every estranged person now at home. What a wonderful vision. But only God could make that vision a reality. And that's just the point. Isaiah does not imagine that the United Nations or a coalition of armies or the next cut in interest rates will bring about that glorious vision. Only God can restore the Garden of Eden. Only God could have created it in the first place, and only God can recreate it in the end. May we return to the New York Marathon. Look at the face of that road-worn woman as she approaches the finish line on the arm of her husband. At the sight of the end, she becomes radiant with joy. Her smile is contagious. And the celebration gives new life to weary limbs. as the dance of joy overcomes the paralysis of pain. Don't you just love a happy ending? So does God. So does God.